Hi everyone, Stepan here. In today's video I'm going to continue covering the games from the Šolta Chess Open. In round 5 I got paired against an unrated opponent, which is unfortunate because if you win you don't get any rating points, and to be honest, if you lose you don't lose any, but considering the tournament situation I really wanted to play somebody higher rated. So I had 2 out of 4, 1 loss, 1 win and 2 draws so far, but it was a good score because the 2 draws were against a 2150 and a 2200 rated player. So yeah, anyway, you should never underestimate lower rated or underrated opponents, so I didn't. Obviously I couldn't prepare for the game because he has no games in the databases, so I just decided to play my main repertoire, whatever he does. I played pawn to e4, he played the Sicilian, and after knight f3 he played d6. Still I don't know if he wants the Najdorf, the dragon or the classical. So d4, c takes, knight f6, and here, I mean, I've been playing knight c3 for a while, and I've been playing both g3 and h3 against the Najdorf, but here I decided to go for the prince, for the f3 Sicilian. Because the variation is very sharp, you can expect that a lower rated or an unrated opponent is not going to be as familiar with the theory and perhaps will not be able to calculate as well as I will. Okay, he plays e5, which is the main move, and after knight to b3, now he plays the most common mistake Najdorf players make, that is to play pawn to a6. Because he wants to play the setup he usually plays. Unfortunately, pawn to a6 simply fails to c4, and white is now immediately slightly better. Why is that? Because, well, it's very hard to play b5, very hard to play the usual Najdorf break with the pawn on c4. And white has very clear plans of occupying the d5 square, where it can be, when it can be occupied by 2 pieces, and when you don't have to recapture with a pawn. Much better moves in this position, what I think is the best move is d5, and after bishop g5, d4, c3, etc. You can watch my video on the Prins Sicilian for that. You can also go for a quick attack on c4, so for example bishop to e6, c4, knight bd7, for example bishop e3, rook c8, and now knight c3. White doesn't have to defend this pawn. There are variations which are very sharp after takes, rook takes, queen d3, rook c7, and castles queenside. Or after rook c7 you can simply grab this pawn and have equal material, because on any b6 you have knight b5 followed by a4, a5. Anyway, there's a lot of theory in the Prince. There are a couple of ways to play aggressively against it, but my opponent chose a6. Okay, so now we have c4, which is the usual move, and here there are a couple of fine options for black which keep the position only slightly better for white. You can go knight c6, you can go bishop e6, you can go bishop e7, you can even go a5, which is the most annoying in my opinion, followed by a4, and then bishop e6. But my opponent played knight b to d7, and this is just a very bad move. Why is it a bad move? Well, firstly, black would like to have this knight on c6 because it's better on c6 than on d7. Secondly, you are blocking in your c8 bishop, and as we know, b5 is hard to play, therefore you're not going to develop it to b7 anytime soon, unless you play b6, which is an extremely weakening move in itself, since white is going to play bishop e3. Therefore b6 will be a weakness, especially in conjunction with knight c3 to d5 in some situations. Not to mention that if b6, knight c3, knight d5, knight takes, the queen could take while the rook is still on a8, which is very common in some Zagreb variations of the Najdorf. So knight bd7, I think on a high level this is already winning for white, so this is just, it's beyond repair basically. Black has wasted too much time, or will have wasted too much time by the time he gets to develop all of his pieces because of this knight on d7. Okay, white has to go for the normal setup. What you want to do is bishop e3, knight c3, rook c1, queen d2, bishop e2, castles, and then the other rook comes to d1. So bishop e3, preventing any queen b6 nonsense. Queen c7. I'm not really sure what this move does. The queen is really not good on c7 because knight c3, knight d5, rook c1 is going to happen. So knight c3, bishop e7, rook c1. And now we can already see that the queen is kind of loose on c7. Maybe knight d5 works already. He played b6. Now, if I do go knight d5, then knight takes, pawn takes, my rook is fine, and b6 is weak, and a6 is weak. But I don't have to do it straight away. I can just build up my position and develop first. So bishop e2. Both sides castle, and he plays knight to c5. And here I had a long think. Obviously, I don't really want to be taking on c5. Either because he is going to take with the d pawn, getting rid of his weakness, and then the best I can do is plant my knight on d5. But he can set up a blockade. For example, takes. If he takes with the b pawn, then d6 is a permanent weakness, but not that easy to target. And if he takes with the d pawn, then knight d5 takes. If I take with the pawn, trying to, well, get a passed pawn. If I take this way, then f5 is annoying, followed by bishop d6 and e4. For example, f5, I don't know, queen d2, bishop d6, rook d1, e4. And I could already be in trouble here. So having this passed pawn is not so great. So anyway, I don't really want to take on c5. I don't really mind him taking on b3. That I think would be great for me. This is my worst piece. This is his best piece. So I decided to double up my rooks, and I played rook to f2. This is the bad bishop in the Maroczy Bind setup. So the light squared bishop obviously is blocked in by these two pawns, and you don't really have anything to do with it until you untangle a bit. So it's fine on f1, and this rook can then exert pressure on the second rank, double up, maybe put pressure on d6, maybe prepare knight d5 by playing rook fc2. Okay, bishop b7, bishop f1, knight f to d7 wants to play f5, which I honestly don't think is advisable in this position. He doesn't really have enough force to be opening the position up. Here I could have gone for rook d2, which I think is a fine move, but I played rook to c2. In many positions, I'm going to be jumping into d5, either winning this bishop on e7 and permanently weakening d6, or after he takes with his light squared bishop, which he'd spent 2 moves to develop, also weakening his structure, I will have my rooks doubled opposite his queen, and all I have to do is move my knight out to d2, play b4, and I win a piece. So tactically, this seemed better to me. f5 played. Knight to d5. He took, because you don't really want to give up your bishop here. If you for example play queen d8, takes, and I play rook to d2, well, we are trading pawns. I can actually take on c5 first, I think. And after knight c5, I can now go b4. This was my calculation during the game, I think. And after knight d7, I can play rook d2. Maybe there's something better, I'm not sure, but I think taking is correct. Bishop takes d5. I mean, considering the position, probably it's the lesser evil move. Okay, now I think this is my first serious mistake of the game, maybe my only serious mistake of the game. I don't remember spending much time here. I think I played almost automatically, which is something you should never do. Because I thought I just had a winning position, which is true. My position is extremely superior, but you still have to convert it, and there are still many ways to mess it up. The material is still equal. I took with the pawn because I just wanted to do what I planned. I wanted to move my knight out and then play b4, or at least expand enough on the queen side. When I was analyzing this position at home, I did manage to find an immediate win with queen takes. And after queen takes d5, he has to play king to h8. Pinning his rook wouldn't really be good. And now I just go ef5. And if this is taken, I just go knight c5. And obviously there's a problem here. Two pieces are hanging, so I don't know, dc5 maybe. And now just rook to d2, putting pressure on the knight. If rook to d8, then queen e6. And eventually one piece drops, it's game over. But yeah, after knight d5, bishop d5 I took with the pawn without thinking. I didn't consider queen d5 because I'd already planned out to play cd. He played fe4, I played fe4, the knight is pinned so he cannot win a pawn, and he played rook to f7. Rook f7 again is not a good move. Why is it not a good move? Because of this and or this. So my bad bishop all of a sudden has become a monster, and I can trade everything off on c5 and basically claim the e6 square forever. Whereas his bishop, even though if I trade on c5 will not be opposed, doesn't really have that many good squares because my pieces are better than his. I played knight d2 first. I'm expecting him to move the queen, but first of all I want to play b4, so he has to react, creating more weaknesses. So he plays a5. If he doesn't, I play b4. I played b3. b3 is simply against any a4 nonsense. I don't want to allow him to expand in any future, any near future. Knight f6 was played, and bishop to e2, just preparing to get my bishop into the e6 square as planned. Obviously the knight is still pinned and it cannot take on e4, but once the queen moves, like here he played queen to d7, I want to be able to play bishop to f3 to defend e4. And now my only weakness has been covered and my position is basically flawless. I don't think I have any problems here. All of my pieces are perfect. My only weakness is defended. He has two weaknesses. I have the bishop pair, I have a safer king. I have no weak squares, whereas he has this gaping hole on e6. Bishop d8 played, preparing to move the knight, doesn't want to lose a pawn. Queen e2, preventing queen to b5 and maybe doubling up on the b6 pawn in the future. Also preparing rook f1 in some cases, preparing knight f1 in some cases, and also once I move this bishop I want my queen to be defending the e4 pawn as well. Okay, knight a6 played. a3, this is a prophylactic move, of course, against knight b4. There's no reason to allow knight b4. Queen b7, I don't really understand this move. To be honest, I don't know what this move is about, but okay. I played knight c4, targeting d6, the newly created weakness, or the weakness which has now been weakened by the queen moving away. Knight e8, this is a really sad move. At this point, it's just all over, and black's pieces are so bad that I'm not even sure he could do anything with a couple of moves in a row. I can choose how to win here. I can play bishop h5 first, or I can play bishop g4. Now obviously both attackers on e4 have vanished, so I have a free hand. If he moves the knight back, then I simply take on d6, forking queen and rook. My bishop is defended by the queen. Or if the knight moves back, I can also choose to play bishop e6 first. I'm not sure which is better. I think knight d6 is stronger. He played king h8, unpinning or potentially unpinning. I played bishop e6 anyway, and rook f6. And now all I have to do is eventually play queen h5 and bishop g5. I started with queen h5 because it threatens a mate in 2, so queen takes knight, rook f8, queen f8. G6 is probably not a good move. I don't know what else to suggest. Maybe bishop e7, but against bishop e7 I have bishop g5. He loses the rook, so he played g6. Here I found the great win. Afterwards, I did not see this during the game. If you want, you can pause the video here and sharpen your tactics a bit. This is hard, but it's a really nice continuation. Okay, so the best way to continue here is knight takes d6. So obviously I'm attacking his queen. If he takes my knight, then I play queen e5, pinning the rook, attacking the knight. Let's say knight e8, defending the rook. This is the variation I calculated at home. Now I just go d6, threatening both d7, making sure this knight has to move, and the bishop to d5. And this is just overwhelming. Also, after bishop d5, for example, knight c5, bishop d5, the queen moves away, I take, play b4, takes, the knight moves somewhere, I go rook c8, thank you very much. Game over. Also, I can just take the knight, yeah, excuse me, stupid. It's hanging with mate in a couple of moves, I guess. Yeah, bishop d5 just threatens to take the knight as well. So yeah, the position is falling apart. After bishop d5, he would probably have to play queen d7 or, yeah, queen d7, and then I just take here. And then I go b4 and rook c8. But I didn't see knight d6 during the game. I played queen to h6, and queen h6 prepares bishop g5. After bishop g5, that's it. I mean, either mate or you lose a rook. He played b5, and I should have played bishop g5 straight away, because if bc4, then bishop f6 check, and if this is taken, then queen f8 is mate. But I played knight d2. I have to be honest, I still played automatically because I thought everything was winning. Obviously, knight d2 is a blunder. Bishop g5 just wins in 2 moves. Because now he can play queen to g7. Not that it's a good move, but he can play queen g7. Here, the best continuation was simply rook c8, threatening to win a piece. And if rook c8, queen h6, bishop h6, something like bishop b6 check and king h1, and knight c7 is still just game over because I can go here and win a piece. So this was the most precise way. I played queen to h3, wanting to play bishop h6 and then bishop to g5. I don't think there's a defense against this either. He played knight ac7, bishop h6. Queen e7 was played. There are no squares for the queen apart from that, and now bishop to g5. Knight e6, bishop f6 check, knight takes f6, queen e6, queen a7 check, king h1, bishop e7, and rook c7 was the final move of the game. I have to be honest, I could have won sooner. I could have won with a prettier sequence of moves. I should not have missed some nice wins, especially here after g6. Knight takes d6 is a brilliant combination. I mean, I wish I'd seen this, and maybe against a high-rated opponent I would have looked for an immediate win. I just didn't do it in this game, and that's a mistake I have to remedy. That's something I have to change. I have to try and play the best moves regardless of my opponent's rating. Anyway, I hope you found it. So yeah, I won in round 5, didn't get any rating points, so I was on 3 out of 5 after round 5, and stood well in the tournament. Tomorrow I'm going to continue with rounds 6 and 7, and yeah, round 7 game was the most complicated and my favorite of the tournament, regardless of how it finished. Hopefully you like it. Anyway, hope you got something from this video as well. Let me know what you think and stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.